A new tool with this quick and easy project. You're going to learn about the gradient mesh. Gradient meshes allow us to add dimension to objects using highlights and shadows, and they're actually pretty easy to apply. So you're going to start with this image of a flower. It's got a couple different color notes in it, and you can either trace each of your individual petals or shapes all at once and then go back and mesh, or you can create a shape and mesh, create a shape and mesh. Now, if it's hard to get it all in one pass, remember you can always add on to the pencil tool as long as you are coming around and tracing over that path. I, of course, picked the most difficult shape to do first. So I want to get rid of that little loop-de-loop, trace on the path, make my edit, come back to the path, it snaps back. I can also, if I need to make my life easier, change the color of the path lines. Let's do options for layer 2. Red is maybe not a good look for this one. I want something that'll show up well. I'm going to go with bright green. That's a lot easier to see. So I've got a couple other edits I need to make really quick. So I'm going to come in, change that shape, and I can pull that point in to match up better. Because if I'm going to trace it, I'm going to do it right. I have the whole image there to work with. I might as well not take the easy way out and make it look choppy. Bring this in just like so. And in some instances, it might make more sense to do anchor point adjustments than it does to go in and trace again. You can also use the smoothing tool. This might be a good time for the smoothing tool. It looks like this. If I need to smooth a path, I trace over the path and its anchor points, and it hopefully smooths them out. I can also get rid of anchor points I don't need by pressing minus. So I can continue to do a combination of those things in order to get my exact petal shape. It might be wise to use a mouse and not your trackpad, but that's just my suggestion. So I've got a shape that's pretty close to what I need for this demo purposes. I need to choose the color that it's going to be. I want it to have a solid fill state because you can't change the color after you've put in a gradient mesh. You also can't change the pathways. So make sure that you have everything exactly how you want it. Otherwise, you're going to have a bad time. I think I'm going to use my eyedropper and go with this color. And it pops over top. I've got this nice solid shape. Let's go ahead and pull and drag this. Oof. Need some smoothing in my life. Smooth. That's a little bit better. Now I'm going to go up to Object, Create Gradient Mesh. Looks a little bit like this. Flat doesn't do a whole lot. You want either to center or edge. In my case, I want to center because I want a light here. I want my highlight at 100%, but you can alter this depending on your needs. This is a little less in your face about it. Actually, let's go 80%. And hit OK. Now, with my white arrow, my indirect selection, I can actually manipulate where these highlights sit using points and pathways. Anywhere there's an intersection, I can click and drag. I can use the handles to manipulate. It's really useful for creating dimension and color, shadows, folds, etc. It's particularly useful for flowers and plants, which is why we're going to be using it, shock of all shocks, for flowers and plants. And I'm going to pull that to get it just so. Now, you might be saying, Basham, that's lovely, but it's just pink and white. So obviously it's not going to work for all of this. But you may have noticed with this lovely, lovely piece here, you have another option. Another option I haven't talked to you much about is freeform gradients. And I can actually show you on this one. I've already traced my shape. It should sit here. I'm going to push it out here, more like. But if I click on my gradient state, I can get to this part. So I'm going to go ahead and I've already applied a gradient state to it, and you can see my freeform gradient here. The way this goes is you come over to this button here, click Freeform Gradient, which mine already is, and you can add extra points for colors to bleed out of. I've largely used the eyedropper tool to make sure that I get the correct points, and this one actually should be a little more faint. So I'm going to come in and hit Edit Gradient because that popped away. I'm going to change this one, I think. And let's push that a little more towards orange so it's not quite so in your face, but it's still there. And I'm going to move and drag this one down because I want it positioned down a little bit farther. I'm going to add point here, point here. Let's go back and get that red. Whoa! That's not what I wanted. Got to go back into my Edit Gradient, I guess. There we go. Choose the correct dropper, slide it on down, and you can adjust the radius of these two guys. Let me go ahead. Why is life so difficult? Let me get off this dropper here. So if I want this to spread out more, I can grab this little handle or shrink it to affect just how much that freeform gradient works. And this is a great way to create more dimension, again, when you have an object that has multiple sources of light or color. So your job is to take this lovely rose and trace it so that you get your petals and all your other lovely things. One last quick thing. You will have an easier time manipulating a mesh if you have fewer rows. So like say I go in, let's see, we want this to just be a solid fill. And I'm going to pick color underneath it. Object, gradient mesh. The more rows and columns I have, the more complex the shape can be. So if I add 6 rows and 3 columns, I will get more of a grid to work with. For this one, really, I just want 6 rows and 2 columns. I think that makes more sense. And if I was being smart, actually, I'd pull this wider to create that lip. And once again, you can't really change the object once you have that gradient mesh applied. See how I just tried to change the color and nothing happened? Keep that in mind. So trace a pretty flower.